Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? This is Joe Firestone for Real Progressives. And it's 8 p.m. Tuesday night. And my guest for tonight is Kentiel D. White, who is running to succeed John Conyers in the 13th Congressional District in Michigan. And Kentiel has some very big shoes to fill. And we are anxious to find out how he might fill them. However, Kentiel was in the lobby a few moments ago, and he's having some technical problems with the sound. He can hear me just fine, but there was something wrong with the sound setting on his PC. He wasn't able to fix it. So he's now switching to his Mac and seeing if he can work something out with his Mac. So that's where we are. Okay, at this point, what I'm going to do while we're waiting for him is to give you an introduction to Ken's platform. But Ken White is very interested in redeveloping neighborhood communities. He wants to make water affordable for residents, churches, and businesses by revisiting the already approved high rates for rainwater drainage fees scheduled to begin in 2018 and by auditing current rates. He wants to stop many tax foreclosures of owner-occupied, unblocked street drains already available that are currently used for other purposes. And he thinks schools and libraries in the 13th district will be able to benefit from that. He wants to increase public safety with more staffing to respond to calls, as well as improved staff retention policies in the 13th Congressional District. He wants to encourage the creation of more block clubs and create club leaders to meet with their congressman on a monthly basis. He wants to establish mandatory affordable housing within revitalized neighborhoods with an option to purchase homes through credit and debt counseling classes. So he also wants to create a program to support transitioning the homeless to homes, which he calls homeless to homebound. The second point of his platform is economic prosperity. He wants our economy to work equally for everyone. He says the slanted economy is a fraud for everyone. And he advises us to see the Great Recession for details. Yes, that was certainly a fraud, okay, on everyone. I realize I still have my promo up, so I'm going to remove that, and you'll be able to see me. Okay, and Ken should hopefully be coming in any minute, so I thank you for being patient. Anyway, Ken asserts small businesses are the lifeblood of the U.S. economy. We must support policies that enhance the growth of small businesses, whether through tax breaks or incentives, ensuring that they can continue to hire new workers. He said wages have stagnated while major corporations earn record profits and the stock market hits all-time highs. He says, I support a minimum wage increase to $15 per hour. And he says, every hardworking Michigander working a 40-hour work week deserves a living wage and should be able to support themselves while saving for the future. It is estimated that in the next decade, the U.S. will need to fill 3.5 million skilled manufacturing jobs, which is why I support job training initiatives, including tax incentives for employers so small businesses can help students pursue careers in high-tech manufacturing. He favors the combination of property sales, state and federal taxes, are making Michiganders one of the highest tax states in the country. And he says, we need to cut waste, to eliminate unneeded by regulations, and reform the tax code to reduce the burden on the middle class. He says, I will work to eliminate tax breaks for special interests, like the carried interest loophole, and ban tax breaks for companies that ship by U.S. jobs overseas. Says the 13th District needs to claim its rightful share of funding to provide the basis for a thriving domestic economy. And he goes on to say, I'm fully committed to protecting and enhancing Social Security and Medicare for current and future generations to ensure our seniors are protected. He wants to create a global education curriculum to compete with students from around the world and include more college preparation courses, personal finance courses, entrepreneurship classes, mentorship, and externship opportunities. I'm not sure what externship opportunities are. I've never heard that term before. I know what internships are. He wants to renovate closed school buildings to provide extended neighborhood services open to the entire community. For tutoring, sports, GED preparation, college preparation, financial aid, job searchers, and volunteer matches. He has a comment on teacher pay. He says, research shows the quality of a teacher in the classroom has the greatest impact on student learning over any other school level factor. Salaries play an important role in recruiting and retaining quality teachers. Ken is coming on, I think, right now, hopefully. Okay, it looks like he's coming on with his phone. I hope that works okay. Hi, Ken.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. It looks like you made it.
Yes. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. And how are you?
I'm blessed.
Okay. You might want to turn up your volume just a little bit on your phone if you can.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I think it should even be a little louder still.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you better now. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, so what I've been doing to prepare is read your platform.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but first I want to announce that you heard just before the show came on that they disqualified 400 of your signatures, and that now you don't have enough to get on the ballot in the
Correct.
congressional district. So my first question then is, do you plan to run as a write-in?
I'm sorry. What was the question again?
Okay, the question is, in view of what's just happened, but do you plan to run as a write-in candidate?
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to challenge the petitions because me and my team believe that we did have enough. We had over 1,265 signatures. They said that 865 count, but the other 400 didn't. So out of the 400, it should have been 200 signatures that automatically counted. That would have put me at 1,665 signatures. If they say there's a error, then we will go in as a write-in candidate. But I'm going to take the copies that I have, go down there, and just go over the petition sheets because we did get the petition. I mean, the signatures out of the district. There's no question about that. We did get them out of the district.
Okay, so while we're talking about this, then, um, can you tell me what the general situation is in your district? I know John Conyers III was running against you for a while. Okay, and I know they disallowed 600 of his signatures. Correct?
No, that's not true. His cousin, Ian Conyers, is challenging his petitions right now. But it stands that John Conyers turned in almost 1,100 signatures. But right now they being challenged. So it's not really confirmed that he only has 675. So right now it's not accurate.
Okay, so it's up in the air now. It's
Yes.
it's possible John Conyers III will be running. It's possible that you are also going to be on the ballot.
Yes, sir. Yes, I am.
Okay, and what is the situation with Ian Conyers, who is the grandnephew of John Conyers Jr., for those of you who do not know that? Okay, so is there any challenge against the signatures, okay, that Ian Conyers came in with?
Well, no, not at this very moment. But I'm thinking about filing a challenge because some of the places that, some of the senior buildings that he went to, I was denied access to those buildings. And so I was talking to my team about it tonight, and then we're gonna talk about it more tomorrow. Because not only him, Brenda Jones, who's the city council president, she was at the building that I was denied entry. So I might just file a challenge against both of those two candidates.
Oh, so you think there were shenanigans in that you weren't able to get into the buildings that you were trying to get into?
Yes, sir.
Partisans of the other campaigns were blocking your entry into those buildings.
Yes, and then I called one building that Brenda Jones was in. I called the supervisor over that manager, and she explained to me that it was a process that you had to go through, but because the pastor brought her in as a guest, that's how she was accessed. I mean, how was able to get into the building and allowed to collect signatures from those residents. Because at that time, at this very moment, that building is not allowed. No candidate is allowed in that building. But because he gave a luncheon, he allowed her to come as a guest, and they was collecting signatures. I got pictures to show. Well, let's say proof. And like I said, I talked to the manager. I talked to the supervisor over the manager, and she said she talked to that pastor, and he was not supposed to allow no candidate allowed into that building.
Okay. Okay, so this is a kind of a roughhouse race with people pulling things on other people.
Yes, yes, it is. And that's what I believe in my campaign because, like I said, we had 1,265 signatures, and they was good to go. We turned in 96 sheets. down there to the Wayne County Clerk office, and we had no discriminaries, it was nothing wrong with those signatures, and also with my copies. As I went through them just a little while ago, they were all correct, and they all came out of the 13th Congressional District. The ones that did not come out of 13, those were that we crossed out because we knew that they wasn't going to count. And that's why we added more signatures to make up the rest of the balance that was could help me to get over the 1,000. But then,
Okay.
but then I found out that we were supposed to have two sets of signatures, one for the partial term, and then the other one for the general election that was going to be in November. We was not told about that one.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. Are there going to be two elections?
It's going to be two elections. One in August. The one in August is to fill whoever wins in August automatically go and they get sworn in. They finish John Conyers' seat from August until January. But there's another election that's coming up in November to start his new term, which is going to be January the 3rd of 2019 and ends in January the 3rd of 2021. So there's two elections.
Okay, so are both elections on the same day?
One is going to be August for the primary, and the other is going to be in November 6th in the general election.
Right, but my question is the primary for both on the same day?
Uh, No, the primary is just for the person who wins the primary election. Automatically, the next day take the oath of office and finish out his term to the
I
end of December 31st. Yes, and
see.
then it ends January 2nd, 2019, and whoever wins the November automatically gets sworn in on January 3rd of 2019 and start a whole new term.
Right, but who is it, or what is the date for the primary election in order to get people on the ballot for the new term election?
That both of them started. Both of, the ending date was April the 25th. So you had to turn in two sets of signatures on April 25th for the primary and the general election. And that's where that's where the miscommunication came at between me and the city clerk office.
Okay, so you did turn in two sets of signatures, though, right?
I turned in one set of signatures for the remainder of his term. But whoever the way it was supposed to go, whoever win August automatically be go into November as a for re-election. But they said that's not the case. It didn't work. It didn't go. It wasn't working. It didn't go that way. So it was a miscommunication between me and the county clerk office. But we
Okay,
could go in
so
as a write-in candidate for the general election if we want to.
so if you win the primary, then you would be able to run to fill out the term, and you'd also be able to run as a write-in candidate for the new term.
Yes, in November, correct.
Right. I see. That's a little on the complicated side.
Yeah, exactly. And they did that for no. They said it was the governor that came up with that idea, but I mean it's so tricky down here. They got to put somebody in somebody.
I understand.
But I'm
Okay.
ready. I'm ready for both of them anyway. So whatever they want to try, let's try it.
Okay. So, uh, okay. So back to the platform.
Okay.
You've got 5 points on your platform.
Well,
Could you?
actually six. Yes, six.
Okay, there are six.
Yes.
Okay. Could you tell us what they are in your own words? I was trying to read them off, but okay, I don't think I got the same effect. Okay, that you would get.
Okay, yeah, it's one missing. It's called the auto insurance rates. We developing our community, economic prosperity, affordable health care, education reform, and equality for all.
Okay. So those are actually categories, but what are some of the policies that you favor within those very broad, okay, and very general categories?
Well, we want to fight for. I mean, we want to fight for redeveloping our community. That means that we want to get rid of crime. We want to get crime down in the neighborhoods. That means we want to make neighborhoods safer for our kids and our seniors.
Right, but what kind of federal policies do you support, okay, in order to get that done?
Well, we want to. We looked into uh, writing more grants to get more law enforcement officers back out there in the community, and also close the gap between law enforcement and the community. Where we want more law. We want to be able to put money back into law enforcement pockets, but getting them a stipend to live back into the community that they work for. The crime rate is totally getting out of control where our kids are not being they're not safe anymore being outside. So we looked into that area. We want to put rec centers back into our neighborhoods so the kids can be able to have somewhere to go and seniors be able to have somewhere to enjoy their time while they still here. We want to fight for the water shutoffs right here in Michigan. We want to find resources to help people who are suffering.
Okay,
Uh,
wait, but it's a little hard to understand that, but because how can you, as a congressman, do anything about the water shortage in Detroit or the water situation in Detroit, but specifically the cost, okay, of water in Detroit and control over the utility companies so they no longer charge the rates they're charging, and so that they stop the shutoffs of service.
but the
Now,
question, okay.
but those things were going on under John Conyers, who had a great deal of influence in the Congress. If you were coming into Congress, then you would be coming in as a new congressman.
Correct.
Okay, so what could you do to influence that? I
Well,
mean, it sounds like it's more a state problem, okay, and more a local problem.
the federal government can't enforce laws to prevent shut off notices because the thing that we want to do is we want to hear from the residents, and they want more control of their water situation and their electricity. And by we looking into, because I grew up in the city, so I know where people are suffering and where the most hard hit areas that, like for example, Holland Park. They don't have any, good housing down there.
Yes,
Inkster,
yes, I know. Highland Park has extremely dilapidated
it
housing.
has.
Okay, in fact, it has had that since the 1970s because I was doing some community studies of certain distressed areas out in Michigan in 1977 now. This goes
Okay.
back to 1977, 40 years ago. And Highland Park was full of dilapidated housing then.
And see, and you know what? The reason that Holland Park started being dilapidated is because they let Chrysler move out. Chrysler decided to close down, and Ford decided to move out their businesses, and that's how Holland Park started going down. But we want to bring it back with more businesses, with entrepreneurship for the community to be an investment in their city. Just like Holland Park Community College, it was a my mother used to take me there a long time ago, and when they let that go. Um, People stopped going to school. They just start, um, it just went downhill, and
Right,
it just need a better tax base in that city right now and more investments, and we can
right.
bring
But
that.
how are you going to get a better tax base?
Well, what we do is again we have people on our staff that are grant writers, and they can help us get the federal dollars to put back into the city of Holland Park, just like the city of Inkster. Inkster was going up on people's water bills to balance their budget, balance their books, but then they turned around and lost their school system because of the low funding. So we have an idea. We really have a strong idea how to put Holland Park, Melvindale, Ecorse, River Rouge, Inkster back together. And just like for example, I don't know if you remember how Hamtramck. Hamtramck was one of the
I
busiest
do remember
cities.
Hamtramck very well.
Yeah, Hamtramck used to be one of the busiest cities. Now it's a ghost town. And we can, I mean, again, it's opened up more resources, more entrepreneurship back into those cities where they would not be taxed at a high cost, but be taxed at a low cost. And again, open up more loans for minorities who want to be.
Wait, if they are taxed, okay, at low rates, but to get them to move in, how does that improve the tax base?
Well, I mean, it will improve the tax base because then they won't be taxed at such as a high rate. So if you want to, like for example, you want to open a business, the loan might be right now is 2.9%, and you want to borrow like say $50,000 to open up a business. We would help you, long as you meet the guidelines, meet the guy like we can help you keep your business open and keep your business flowing. So we have ideas to help each community flow again, and because of the economy, it can bring jobs back. It can get families out of shelters and back into the neighborhoods.
Okay. So in general, what you're talking about is you want to get some federal money invested in the local communities
Exactly.
in order
Yes.
to redevelop the local communities so more businesses might want to relocate into the communities.
And that's true. Yeah, but we have
And
to
so
deal.
that entrepreneurs would be motivated to come to the communities and start some new businesses.
Exactly. It's just like the only reason that Amazon did not come to Michigan is because of three reasons. We didn't have a mass transit, the auto insurance rates, and they said something about education that it was due to this the our education system has one of the highest rates right now. That's the only reason why Amazon did not they overchose Michigan and went somewhere else. But we can fix that problem. We could be more an investment back into the state and into the cities. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna hold everybody from elected officials to accountable for their actions who was not taking care of their residents.
Okay. Uh,
But we
okay.
need to but we need to get rid of that right to work law in Michigan. We need to get rid of that right to work law. That right to work law is what is stopping unions from having a way to bar to make ends meet. And the right to work law
But
is hurting
if
everybody.
the only way to get rid of the right to work law, okay, in Michigan now is not uh, okay. If you get elected to the U.S. Congress, then from there you're not going to get rid of the right to work law. But in Michigan, in other words, the only way to do it from the U.S. Congress is to pass a national law overriding right to work laws in all the states.
But in
Okay.
Michigan, but see, whoever the new governor is, whoever the new governor, they do have the power to remove the word right to work law, and the emergency manager law. They have the right to do it.
As I recall, they wouldn't have the right to remove it themselves. They would have to be joined by the legislature.
Yeah, but it's time for Michigan to like Michigan being controlled by Republicans for the
Yes,
last
no, I've been
two
watching that
terms.
for years and
Yeah,
years and years.
from ever since John Engler to Jennifer Granholm to Rick Snyder, the Republican Party has control. And whoever, if we could turn
I
the red
remind you,
seats,
but Jennifer Granholm was a Democrat.
yeah, she was, but she only got certain laws passed because she had to. I mean, there was a lot of shutdowns under her administration.
There was a
Uh,
lot of shutdowns under her administration because she was a victim of the recession.
exactly. I mean, we all were. I mean, even when we had that 9/11 that hit Michigan. and it hit New York. That took out a lot of economy. I mean, it drove up the economy, and we never recovered from that situation.
Right, but then you had the collapse of 2008, which was even worse for Michigan.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, we it was
Okay, so
just.
that was
I
really
mean,
a devastating thing, and then that's what gave control of the Michigan government to the Republicans and Rick Snyder.
and then Snyder, I mean, he might have drove down the unemployment rate, but the only reason that unemployment rate is down is because a lot of people stop applying for jobs that they couldn't afford to get. Just like for me, I have associates, a bachelor's, and a master's, and I was applying for jobs right here in the state that I live in. And then not only I was going outside the state to apply for jobs, and a lot of them say, "Well, you overqualified. You don't meet the qualifications." But I live right here in the state of Michigan, and I could not even get a state job. They kept denying me. So I can understand because I was going to Michigan works just like everybody else was, trying to apply for jobs. The first thing like say, you were overqualified, or you don't meet the qualifications, or you just got too much education. We can't hire you at that level.
Okay, well, this all seems to me to be very complex, and to tie in with your ideas on economic prosperity.
Prosperity, yes,
But what I don't see there is I see a very heavy emphasis, okay, on what the private sector would do, but I don't see much of an emphasis on what the federal government would do. And again, you are running for Congress, and so you'd be trying to pass new federal laws and new federal policies that would bring federal money into Michigan and bring that
correct.
money in a big way.
And bring it back to and bring it back to the neighborhoods that are have been dilapidated and not being well taken care of. Because again, my campaign is about holding everybody accountable. I mean, we need to make like we need to put Westerners back into our neighborhoods. We need more buses and more mass transit into our community. That's the only way is to get Michigan moving forward. Is to be caught up. I mean, if you see other cities that other states, I say, well, other states, they are more in technology than the state of Michigan. So we have to be on the same page for us to be able to compete with other states.
Okay, I entirely agree that you need to improve technology in Michigan. I also know you've been trying to do that for years and years and years and
Yeah,
years. And in spite of the fact that the university system is still pretty good, and you certainly got two, if not more, very outstanding universities um, in the state. What people do is they go to those universities and then they leave the state.
exactly.
Yeah, they don't stay in the state anymore because they don't see opportunities in the state. So you have two universities that are among the finest in the world, and it's not doing the state any good, even though the state is spending big money on those universities. But you know,
Yes.
it's doing the rest of the country a lot of good, but it's not doing the state of Michigan a lot of good.
No, it's not because the problem again. I mean, we have Michigan State and we got University of Michigan. University of Michigan right now, Michigan State is on the fire about the Dr. Larry Nasser situation that happened. But University of Michigan, you have a lot of new young doctors that are staying in Michigan because they love Michigan. They might not because of the weather, but they see opportunity in other states. And what I want to do is I want to talk to those individuals, trying to keep them here. Just like I wanted to do a plan with nurses, seniors, who just want to become LPNs and RNs. We, when I was a candidate for governor, I talked to them. And what I wanted to do was to say, okay, well, the state will help you become a LPN, but you have to sign a contract to state that you will stay here for so many years, and the state will say, well, it's be like a forgiven loan, but you have to meet that qualification to stay here. But we would love for you to be a resident in the state of Michigan. What can we do to keep you here? Just like in the city of Detroit, it's over. Detroit used 1 million people. Now we only have less than 524,000 residents.
I know.
And I mean, they pick it up some. Guess what? They leave it because right now Michigan economy is too high. I mean, you got to pick and choose for food or gas for your vehicle, or you got to either make a choice of your rent or your car note or your auto insurance. Because right now, auto insurance in Michigan is very high. Over there on St. John by St. John Hospital, insurance is right now almost like $100 to $600 a month, and that's a mortgage.
My God, that is a mortgage.
And that's why a lot of people are leaving out.
Okay, in many parts of the country, that's not a mortgage. But in Michigan, because property values are down, yeah, that's a mortgage. So let me tell you something about me.
Okay.
From 1960 to 1965, I spent my time in Michigan, in East Lansing, getting a PhD in Michigan. And for those years, I was married to a Michigan girl. Also, she was a Detroit girl. Okay, and her mother worked in the Detroit schools. She was a phys ed teacher, and her father worked as a custodial engineer, also in the Detroit schools.
Okay.
Okay, so I got to know that family fairly well at that time, and I got to know Michigan fairly well at that time. Okay, and Detroit at that time, okay, in the 1960s, was still, from 60 to 65, it was still a thriving city. Okay, and the roads in Michigan were great, and the automobile culture was great. And if you had factory jobs at that time, those were middle-class jobs.
Yeah.
And some of those people not only had nice homes within the city, okay, and within the suburbs, but they also had summer cottages on the lake. They could afford those things. They could afford to send their kids to college.
Yes.
It was just an entirely different sort of culture, and time, okay, was entirely different. Okay, and during those years, those were the first years that John Conyers actually got elected.
Exactly.
In 1965. Okay, and when he got elected in 65, okay, it was the end of the Kennedy era. Okay, the Johnson era just had started, and all systems would actually go for Michigan at that time.
Yes.
Okay, and everything has gone south since. I seem to remember, I'm not sure I have the figure right, but I seem to remember that at that time the population of Detroit was over 1 million people. Okay, I'm not sure that I exactly have that right, but I think that was it. It was really a major metro, just in terms of the metropolitan area itself. It must have been 5th or 6th in the United States at that time. It was really a big deal. When I went back in the late 70s, it had already started to decline. There was redevelopment that was going on in the downtown area. Some urbanization, some new yuppie developments. Okay, were going up there. Some skyscrapers. The jazz scene was still very, very big there. Okay, and it was, but you could see a decline setting in then
Yes.
in the late 70s. But as I watched the years go by, I just got extremely shocked by what was happening in Michigan. It wasn't the fault of the people who were living there or the people who were living in the Detroit area, but it had to do with federal policies. It had to do with tax incentives for the businesses to relocate overseas. Okay? It had to do with the fact that tax revenues at the state level got by very, very short. It had to do with the fact, if I might say so, that people began to vote Republican.
Exactly.
Okay, and so all these things were hurting the state over a very long period of time. It seems to me if the state is to recover and if the metropolitan area is to recover and if your district is to recover, then what's really needed is a huge influx of federal funding to start the process.
Exactly.
So now there are some questions that I want to ask you, which are based on what I see or don't see in your platform. You are advocating that healthcare has to be affordable, accessible, and comprehensive. Well, John Conyers Jr. had an answer for the healthcare problem. It was Medicare for All, H.R. 676, which he introduced term after term after term after term until finally now the bill is still introduced into Congress.
Mm-hmm.
It's now being sponsored by Keith Ellison, who has taken over sponsorship from Conyers, because he left. Why don't you mention HR 676 in your platform? Are you for HR 6
Yes.
76 or not?
Yes, I am. I mean, I am for single payer Medicare. Where I looked into at first, I wasn't aware of what the basis of the insurance was. I mean, the health care. Until I got a more study about when I was running for governor of the state of Michigan. Uh, I had to ask the question about the single payer. And when I looked at California, it was saying that each resident would have to pay $300 for their insurance. But the thing is, they would give them like a voucher to go into like a hospital. But if you have surgery, say you get $50,000, they give you a voucher for 50 grand, and you go to surgery.
Okay, so I got a question for you.
Okay,
Have you read John Conyers' bill?
I looked at it. I looked previously. I looked at it, but I didn't go almost in detail because we have our own healthcare bill that we want to put out there that's for Medicare for all residents, even like the United Healthcare. Because
Wait a minute.
when it,
Are you talking about a state level bill now?
no, I'm talking about on the federal part. Because when Obama's healthcare bill came out, when Obama rolled out with his insurance, uh, I was qualified for Obamacare, but we was not qualified for the tax part.
Okay,
For
but
the
wait. HR 76 is a Medicare for all bill, no copays, no deductibles. Service is free at the point of service. It covers every major thing. It covers drugs. It covers mental health care, psychiatry. It covers dentistry. It covers chiropractic. There's nothing it doesn't cover except for cosmetic stuff.
okay, okay.
Free at the point of service. Now, my question to you is why isn't that in your damn platform?
Well, we looked at that. I'm like again, we looked at it. And I'm not trying to charge residents for health care because it should be
It don't,
free. Wait a
it
minute.
won't charge residents for health
I say
care.
I won't charge. I won't charge because it would fall back on the state, but the federal will help every resident make sure
No,
that.
no, HR 676 doesn't fall back on the states. The states are completely relieved of all responsibility on it. Read the bill. It's a 35-page bill.
Okay, I see what you're talking about. Yeah,
You
just
need to read that bill because
okay.
everything you're saying now is not relevant to that bill. So let me tell you about something else. Okay? The first thing you need to make the economy come back in your area and in all the other areas of Michigan too, and in all the other areas of the nation is a federal job guarantee bill. The federal job guarantee bill is going to be introduced into Congress in the next session by Bernie Sanders and people who are allied with Bernie Sanders. It provides for guaranteed federal jobs that would be federally funded, okay, and locally defined. And everyone who wants a full-time job or a part-time job, for that matter, would be able to get one. There are good fringe benefits under the bill. Bernie Sanders is currently specifying the rate of pay under the bill at $15 per hour, which you yourself have advocated
Yeah, correct.
in your program. So this bill would specify a de facto minimum wage for the whole country of $15 per hour. Okay, which in Detroit currently is probably a living wage because property values have gone down so much and the mortgage rates are so little. So that probably would be a living wage. I don't think it's a living wage over the whole country, but in really rundown areas, that's probably a living wage. Now, think about the situation where everybody in all your district has a job offer if they want a job, and has a job that would be defined by the local authorities as having local community value, community development jobs, but green jobs, jobs in taking care of the elderly, jobs in taking care of children, jobs in ending food deserts, jobs for the public purpose, which would be defined by local community authorities, including the participants in the program themselves. The unemployment centers would become employment centers, real employment centers.
Exactly.
People who wanted to work could automatically find jobs. It doesn't matter what the demographics of the people are either. There would be no discrimination based on anything. You go in and you want a job and you get a job offer at $15 per hour. If there's nothing in there you want to do, then you get a chance to propose a new venture and you get paid while you're doing it. And that can be approved by the local authorities. That is the local community notables. I'm not talking just about the city authorities or state authorities or people like that, but various stakeholders, okay, within the communities would be in committees to approve these particular projects. Also, there would be no federal limit on what was spent on this program across the country. So there is the potential in this program to reinvigorate every local area in the country, including yours. My question to you is, do you know about this bill?
Well, we don't know anything about this bill because they said anything in there about this bill. And I've been watching CNN off and on, so I didn't know anything about this bill.
You won't learn anything from
Okay,
CNN because they don't cover Sanders.
but
Because
again,
they're the mainstream press. They're full of BS. They're not going to cover Sanders.
but again, we.
Get
I mean,
your people. Get your people to the Sanders Institute.
okay,
Get them to go to the Levy Institute and learn about this job guarantee proposal that is currently circulating. You need to get right on top of this, and it should be part of your platform. If one of the other candidates who are running against you are advocating for this, if this is not on their platform, and you get into it and you put it on your platform, you're going to have a big advantage over them. If you go for Medicare for all, okay, and you go for this jobs program, and they don't, you're going to have a major advantage over them.
okay. What was it again? The Sanders.
The Sanders Institute, okay, and the Levy Institute, Levy space Institute.
Got it.
Okay, Google them both, and you'll find there are recent research reports on this. Very comprehensive stuff, backed by strong economics, under development for 25 years. More and more people are learning about this. If you get a jump on your competitors in this race, then you're going to have an advantage. But I point out, Ian Conyers or John Conyers III may know something about it, because John Conyers himself had a jobs bill on the fire when he had to leave Congress. He had introduced the jobs bill. Okay, now it wasn't a federal job guarantee bill. It wasn't as good as what I'm talking about, but it was better than what anybody else had at the time. So you should at least know what John Conyers was actually proposing, because he didn't just stop with the Medicare for all bill.
Oh yeah.
Okay? So if you get that passed with other people in Congress, the first thing that's going to happen is that this is going to revitalize your area and bring new consumption power into your area and spread it throughout the whole area. And then it will make it also a more desirable area. And there's something else you can do too. Okay, what you can do is join with other progressives who get into Congress to pass a bill dealing with the race to the bottom in this country, dealing with controls and restraints on corporations that want to move from one state to another and from one country to another, to stop them from doing that. Exactly. I know you can't completely stop them, but you can restrain them. You can make it costly for them. You can remove the economic incentive for them to move from one state to another. And this is good, because when you compete for these businesses with other states, all states lose. All states run into a situation where the wages are bid lower and lower, and the state governments are impoverished because none of them can tax the businesses. If they tax the businesses, they lose the businesses to another state. I mean, that's been going on for 70 years now.
Exactly.
I mean, you got to stop that. The only way to stop that is for the federal government to get in the middle and say, no, this is not going to go on in the United States anymore. And to stop the businesses from moving overseas. One way to stop the businesses from moving overseas is to say, okay, if you move over to other countries, then you won't be able to sell your products back into the United States for 10 years. How do you like those apples? Then see if they move to other countries. They're not going to move to other countries if they lose their market here.
No, they're not. They won't. They won't even. They will still be here.
So, okay, what I'm saying is, if you want to win this election, you got to run on a strong platform that's for the people, that offers them something so they know you're on their side. Okay, for example, with respect to the VA backlog, okay, why do we have a VA backlog? Because the Defense Department isn't spending money on the VA.
Exactly.
They're not spending money on the returning soldiers. They just got another $80 billion from Congress, more than they asked for.
Exactly.
Right? And they're not going to spend it on the VA. Why not? They didn't even ask for the additional $80 billion. Why aren't they going to spend it on the VA?
Because the veterans don't count. I mean, the veterans doesn't count. And that's
what I'm saying is,
but wait a minute, the veterans,
you as a progressive member of Congress can join with other progressive members of Congress to make the VA count, to make our soldiers count. And you can run against any Republicans, okay, or any Democrats who are not for that. There's nothing so popular as our returning soldiers. So you got to be tough about that.
Exactly, because I'm with veterans every single day, and that's what I do. I transport veterans back and forth, and I see what the problem going on right now in the VA. Because if the VA hospital get privatized, that means that they want veterans to start making a copay if they go to the ER, like you go to a regular hospital, and that's what's going on right now, and that's why some of these veterans are literally about being at the hospital and going outside to another facility because they're not getting the services that they are entitled to.
Okay, Ken. If you pass HR 676, okay, a Medicare for All bill with no copays and no deductibles, then guess what? The veterans, as well as all the rest of us, can go to any doctor they want, any hospital they want, and it's free, no copays and no deductibles. It's covered under HR 676. So that takes care of most of the VA problem. The rest of the problem, in other words, the kind of health care that requires the specialized services of the VA physicians, can continue to be funded by the Defense Department. But this would take a lot of burden of funding off the Defense Department, because for most services people require, the veterans can just use HR 676. So it solves that problem too.
Exactly.
Okay, so you need to be on it. Okay, now if you propose all these things, there are some people who are going to come to you, not just some people. One of the first things you'll probably hear when you run up against a Republican is, what are you talking about, Ken? How are you going to pay for this junk? Maybe we won't say that. We'll say, I like all this stuff. I think people should have it. But how the hell are you going to pay for it? That's the kind of thing that he's going to ask you. So my question to you is, how are you going to pay for it? Because you're going to have to answer that.
Well, we not. But one thing is that we're not raising taxes on our residents, but we will raise taxes on people who take jobs outside of the United States. We will go after them and make them pay for benefits to help our veterans. And I mean, if you go take a job out of state, you should pay taxes on that, and that's where the money go come from. But if we go close loopholes, within the federal government and go after, show more accountability against the ones who decide to take their jobs outside of the United States.
Okay, so here, but what you're doing is you're making a very common sense kind of assumption. Okay, and that assumption is not a correct assumption. And the assumption you're making, okay, is the assumption that you have to tax people in order to spend. And maybe it's even the assumption that taxes fund spending. Well, what I'm about to tell you is that no, at the federal level is not like the state level. The federal level is not like a household. It's not like a city. Okay, it's not like a state. The federal government creates its own money. How does it create its own money? The Congress appropriates spending. And then there are various rules and procedures that are in place to allow the Federal Reserve to add to the balances in the Treasury spending account so the Treasury can spend what Congress has ordered it to spend. That's the truth of the matter. People, however, can't see the truth. The reason why they cannot see the truth is because it's all hidden by the complexity of the procedures that the Treasury Department has to go through to get its account actually added to by the Federal Reserve. Generally speaking, if there's deficit spending involved, then the way we do that spending, okay, at this time, is that the federal government issues debt instruments. It issues securities. It issues bonds. Okay, it issues notes, okay, of various kinds that are sold. The Federal Reserve actually carries out auctions at which these securities are sold. Okay, then the revenue is collected. That revenue is still not used for spending. It's much like the case with taxes, because in the bank settlement processes that are involved at the Federal Reserve, that money that is collected through selling bonds and the money collected through taxes is destroyed when the Federal Reserve actually marks down the private accounts before it marks up the Treasury spending account. Okay, and that's because of what the rules require at this point. So it looks like, for people who are looking at this from the outside, it looks like new money is not being created by the Federal Reserve, but that the Treasury Department is using old money that was gathered from taxing and selling bonds. Okay. But the truth is, that's not what's happening. When the Federal Reserve destroys that money, okay, that I was telling you about, the Federal Reserve is also required to create new money in the Treasury spending account. That requirement is set by the rules that Congress has set up in developing the whole framework. It's not explicit for people to see, but it's still the reality. The Federal Reserve has to fill the Treasury spending account when it destroys the money in the private sector accounts. Okay, so there's another way to do this, and I'm going to show you the other way right now.
Okay.
Which doesn't require taxes at all. Okay, I'm going to put this on solo so you can see it, okay, and you can read it. Somebody's going to ask you the question, your programs look expensive. Quote, how are you going to pay for them? Unquote. So that's the question. Now, the simple answer to this, and it's a very simple answer, is where the Congress will just order the Federal Reserve to give the Treasury the money. No debt instruments involved in this, no tax money involved in this, just according to Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, Congress has the power to spend. So Congress can order the Federal Reserve to give Treasury the money because Congress has empowered the Federal Reserve to create the money by marking up the balances in bank accounts, including the Treasury spending account. So that's the explanation. Now, just apart from that explanation, of course, it's more complicated when you need to put that legislation into appropriations bills in Congress. Okay? But there's something simple for that too. Not as simple as the one sentence answer, the 12-word answer that I gave you, but there is an answer, 2 paragraphs, 2 sentences really, each one a paragraph, inside of an appropriations bill, can fund the spending in a bill and at the same time fund the repayment of debt during the period of the appropriation. That's all. Just these 2 paragraphs. Some appropriations bills you see in Congress, they might be 2,300 pages. This is just 2 paragraphs. That's all you need to take care of the problem of how you're going to pay for it. Okay, now, I'm not going to lie to you. The problem of how you're going to pay for it may end there, but then your Republican critics are going to jump to another problem immediately, and maybe your Democrats too. Okay. And they're going to say, that's inflationary. If you do it this way, it's going to cause inflation. So when you're answering that question, the first thing you have to do is to say, okay, so wait, hold everything. You're agreeing with me that there's no problem in the federal government actually funding the spending. There's no solvency problem there. In other words, the federal government can always get the money it needs to pay for the appropriation and to pay down the debt, right?
Yep.
And they got to say right, because they brought in a second problem. So then you have to drive home to them. So I've solved your first problem, which was your claim that we're always going broke. So now let's move to your second problem, which is the inflation problem. And the way you solve the inflation problem is you tell them then, we're going to handle inflation by passing a separate taxation bill. And all we're going to do with that separate taxation bill is to tax enough to prevent inflation being caused by the government spending. When I say tax enough, I don't mean that we're going to collect the same amount in taxes that we spend. We're not. The reason why is because at the federal level, we want to pass full employment budgets. We don't want to pass The balanced budgets. We want to pass budgets that balance the economy, not budgets that are balanced between taxes and spending. At the federal level, because we have trade deficits and because we have desires of people to pull money out of the economy and save, we have leakages from the economy of demand every year. Those leakages might run as high as 12% of America's GDP.
Exactly.
So, what's America's GDP right now? $20 trillion, roughly. So, what's 12% of $20 trillion? $2.4 trillion. So, we'll tax just enough to remove money from the economy to leave a deficit of $2.4 trillion. And that will be our full employment budget. So then you have to notice the following. Right now, but last year, we ran a deficit of something like $650 billion. That was way short of the $2.2 trillion we needed back then. Way short. That's why we have all these people who've dropped out of the labor force. That's why we couldn't get near real full employment. We got this funny statistic that says we're at 4%. Well, you and I know that's bullshit because you know all these people have left the labor force.
Exactly.
Because you told me that earlier. They've left the labor force. They can't earn a living. They're living off their families. Maybe off charity. Maybe they don't know where the next meal is coming from. That's caused because the deficit was too small, because they couple the deficit with selling debt, and they don't get rid of the debt in the way I told you about. That's why it works in that way. We don't need a budget of to have a deficit of 650 billion.
No.
We don't even need the projected deficit for this year of 850 billion or the projected deficit of 1 trillion for next year. We need a deficit of $2.4 trillion spent in the right way, on the right things. Now, I told you what those things are. They're Medicare for all. They're a job guarantee for everybody. They're green jobs programs, but climate change programs, housing programs, big infrastructure programs, maybe 600 billion a year. 650 billion for the job guarantee program. There may be a little bit of a basic income for those people who can't work, okay, or just cannot fit into a job to supplement the job guarantee program. Maybe that costs another 200 billion. And maybe not tax any more than we're taxing now to have the Medicare for All program. So that might require another 500 billion or 600 billion. Well, pretty soon we get to the 2.4 trillion. So we can get there, but we need to spend on the right things.
Exactly.
That have high fiscal multipliers, not on the wrong things. Those are the things that need to be in your platform. They're not there now. And you don't know how to finance the stuff now. You need to change your platform and get an advantage over the Conyers boys. Because at least one of those Conyers boys is going to know about the Medicare for All bill.
Well, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to email you our new platform that we put together. I will email it to you tonight or I can email it to you tonight so you can take a look at it. This is our new platform that we put together.
Okay, I'd be happy to look at it.
Okay, we would definitely send it to you. I definitely send it to you. Just email me your email address, and I'll send you my Vision for Change packet because we had to
Okay, I'll
change.
send you my email address by Facebook, okay?
Okay, because we had to change a lot. We had to put stuff on the website because we had other people that was going on there, copying what we put on there. So we had to make a whole new, just like like a provision platform, but we actually have a whole type of new platform right here in the packet. Because again, we had people going there selling stuff from our websites. Just like when I was a candidate for governor, I had Senator Comey Young the second, stealing my ideas and using them as his own platform.
Well, that's certainly probably going to happen, but the way you stop that, or the way you make them pay for doing something like that, is you know your program better than other people, and you become able to talk about it better, okay, than other people, and people see you're more authentic about it and more sincere about it, and that you know what it's about, that you understand it, and then they're going to vote for you. So it's not just about copying a platform.
Exactly. Okay.
You really have to understand what that platform is about. Okay, and you have to understand that federal financing is not like state financing.
No, it's
The
not.
Republicans and the fiscal conservatives and the Clinton wing of the Democratic Party want you to think that that's true. They want you to think the only real money is tax money. That's BS. The
Exactly.
only real money is federal money created by the federal government under the Constitution of the United States. The other money created by the banks is all backed by the federal money, all sitting in the Federal Reserve. Well, most of it's sitting in the Federal Reserve, except for the small amount of cash money that's out there and coins that are out there. Other than that, the high powered reserves from federal money creation itself, they're all sitting at the Federal Reserve in the accounts of the banks that have accounts at the Federal Reserve. Okay? The other money that's out there in your local bank, where you have your savings and stuff like that,
Yeah.
that stuff is money that was created by the banks using the power granted to them by being part of a Federal Reserve system. It's not real federal money in there. It's not high powered money. Those are called by US dollars, but they're not the real US dollars. The real US dollars are in those reserve accounts, and they back the whole rest of the system. Okay, so that's what's backing the whole system. So you need to know that, and you need to know that financing is different at the federal level because of that. And the federal government has this power to create money, and therefore it has much more policy space than the states do because it can run big deficits, huge deficits. Now, it can't run deficits that are unlimited, but that doesn't have anything to do with the debt. It just has to do with if you create too much money without taxing away enough money, you're going to get an inflationary situation. So that's why you do need to tax. Now, here's something else with respect to taxing. There are reasons to tax. So if someone comes at you and says, well, you're suggesting we don't tax, you say, bullshit. I would never, I would never suggest that. I would never suggest that. there are all kinds of reasons why we need to tax. And those reasons are, first of all, taxes drive the value of the currency.
Exactly.
Okay. In other words, for federal money to be worth anything, then people have to require that money to pay their taxes. Now, in actual fact, we don't pay our taxes with real federal money. We pay our taxes to the banks with the credits that they've given us, which I just pointed out are not actually real federal money. But when the tax debt is settled within the banking system, up at the Federal Reserve level, those are real federal dollars that are taken out of the private banks that are used to pay those taxes. Okay? So that federal money has to be available in order to drive the value of the currency, to make people think, which is true, that they need something called dollars to pay their taxes with. They can't pay with Bitcoin. They can't pay their federal dollars with chickens.
Mm-mm.
They can't pay their federal dollars with drugs. They got to pay their taxes with U.S. money. That's the only thing that's acceptable. Okay, as that U.S. money is defined within the banking system of the United States, or with cold hard cash. Okay, so that's one reason. Second reason, taxes reduce demand in the economy to stabilize the purchasing power of the dollar. That means taxes stop inflation by reducing demand. Then yet another reason to tax is that we want to do something about the distribution of wealth and of income in our society, because that distribution of wealth is a threat to democracy. We see it all the time. I mean, we see the hugely rich people buying our Congress people all the time. We want to tax to help stop that. Not because we need their money to pay for anything. Their money doesn't pay for anything. But because they shouldn't have it, because it's a danger to our democracy because of the way they use it. Okay? Then, we also have to express public policy in subsidizing or penalizing various kinds of industries, economic groups, because we want to encourage certain behavior and discourage other behavior. For example, people who are polluting, or companies that are polluting the environment, creating climate change problems, we want to make them pay for that. We don't want the cost of that to fall on the public. We want it to fall on them. If they're poisoning the water supply in Flint, Michigan, we want them to pay for poisoning the water supply. Okay? We also sometimes want to place the cost of certain kinds of national benefits, at least to some degree, on the recipients of those benefits. And the reason why we do is not because we need to do that, but for various policy reasons, we may not want to give them a free ride. Exactly. Because we want them perhaps to appreciate the value of the benefits. Okay, that again. So those are reasons to tax, but not one of them is about having to pay for anything. Taxes do not pay for spending. What pays for spending is appropriations by Congress, followed by setting up arrangements so the Federal Reserve is ordered, is mandated to mark up the Treasury spending account. The reason why I want that change is look how stupidly things are done now. Congress
Yeah, I
passes
know.
an appropriation, they mandate, they order the Treasury Department to spend that appropriation in a single year. But then they don't provide the funds up front for the Treasury Department to do it. They have the Treasury Department play games with the Federal Reserve throughout the year so the Federal Reserve can follow its rules and top up the Treasury spending account. What is that BS about? It's about continuation of gold standard practices. Those were the practices we followed on the gold standard because we didn't want the federal government to run out of gold. So we wanted to limit spending. But now that rationale is gone. We don't have to do that anymore. We shouldn't be doing that anymore. If we order the Treasury Department to spend $4 trillion a year, then Congress ought to get the Fed to give the Treasury Department the $4 trillion up front. And then Congress ought to worry about taxing away a sufficient amount of that so there's no inflation. That's a very straightforward way to do it. But I'll tell you something else. When and if you get into Congress, you're going to have to change this insane pay-go system
Insane.
Congress has right now, where for domestic spending, this doesn't apply to military spending, evidently, but for domestic spending, Nancy Pelosi and the Republicans and a majority of the Democrats want to follow this stupid pay-go system where people get taxed first, or at least where we set up the taxation first before we're allowed to do the spending, and we have to prove that it's all neutral. That there's no deficit in these programs. That's insanity because we need deficits of 2.4 trillion a year. That's insanity. You have to overturn that pay-go system when you get there. Almost the first job there is saying, screw that pay-go system. Let's order the Treasury to spend on what we need. Let's order the Federal Reserve to give the Treasury the money. And then let's tax away that part of it that is inflationary. And to do that, you're going to have to get rid of the pay-go system.
Okay.
So
So the
almost the
pay
first
system
thing
will be
you
the
get in
first one.
Congress is if Nancy Pelosi is still there as the majority leader, and if the Democrats should take over the House, get rid of Nancy Pelosi.
I know everybody's just tired of her. She needs to go. It's been
She
time to
needs
clean
to go.
house.
Yeah, she needs to go. I have no idea who would replace her because everybody in her leadership is an idiot.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I don't know at this point who would have the smarts and the congressional experience to replace her.
Nobody's. I mean,
Uh,
because she definitely she should have been gone a long time ago. She the one that forced John Conyers to just to quit. I mean, not even give him due process rights.
that's right. That's right. Okay, so look, I have lectured you what was supposed to be an interview.
Well, no, it's good
But
because now I mean I understand it where where it's where you coming from to making sure that we I get elected and help me turn this campaign around because with the help with these information that you giving me, it will get more. I mean, the voters out there a bird's eye view of what my platform is and what what I'm standing for to get Michigan moving forward again, especially the 13th Congressional District.
Right, but I think if you can't pass the kind of legislation that will get the whole country moving again, you won't be able to pass the kind of legislation that's going to get the state of Michigan moving again.
Exactly.
It's a case where everybody has to work, okay, for everybody else. Okay, now, if you're talking about the pay-go system, okay, and getting rid of the pay-go system, there's a candidate running for Congress. There's a candidate running for Congress in the Virginia 9th District right now. His name is Justin Santopietro.
You said 9th District
In the 9th District, right, okay, of Virginia. I don't know if he's going to win or not yet. Okay. But if he does, and you're there too, then latch on to him because he knows exactly how to get rid of the pay-go system.
Okay.
He can tell you all about it. He studied it in detail. He can teach other people in Congress about it, and he can teach you how to get rid of it.
Is there any way that we can that I can reach out to him to get more information from him?
Yeah, I think you can. Okay, I think you can. He's on Facebook. Okay, his name is Justin Santopietro. It's Santo.
S-A. Okay, I think I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it. That's
okay.
So
if you got him, you can friend him.
I just did.
Okay, and you can ask him if he can send you information on his work on the pay-go system.
Okay.
Okay, but I caution you on one thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's not running on the job guarantee in his district. And the reason why he's not running on the job guarantee in that district is because it's a conservative district. And he doesn't think they'd be down with the job guarantee yet. So he's not running on the job guarantee for political reasons. But you're running in a solid blue district full of people.
Democrats. Yep, Democrats.
Full of people who need work. Really, really need work. And they're going to love this. I mean, they're just going to love it.
Yeah, I like it. I'm looking at his healthcare thing right now, and it's a lot better than what mine said. But I definitely see you mine, so you can take a look at it. But we definitely gonna study that bill, the HR 676. We're gonna look right into it. First thing tomorrow, I'm gonna take it with me. I'm gonna print it out and go over it.
Okay, I should say something else about that.
Okay.
The 676 bill. And that is, I don't necessarily agree with all of it because John Conyers had a pay for in there. Because John Conyers himself did not realize that the federal government can spend for certain things without having to tax for those things. So he put in a pay for, and the pay for is a wealth tax.
A wealth tax.
Okay, now I'm in favor of a wealth tax for some of the other reasons, okay, that I gave you. Okay, but what I'm telling you here is that if there's a fight over HR 676 in the Congress, and the fight revolves around the taxing measure in it, okay, revolves around the wealth tax, then maybe you can strike a bargain with the conservatives, okay, and tell them, okay, if you approve the deficit spending needed for this bill, if you approve the deficit spending and you put that overt congressional financing clause into the appropriation, okay, then we can agree that we won't tax if you put this overt congressional financing clause right into this HR 676 bill, because we can finance it that way without having to do a wealth tax on you guys.
Exactly.
Okay, now mind you, someday you're going to have to come back and do a wealth tax on them, probably much higher than that wealth tax, just because you have to change the distribution of wealth. Okay, for reasons that I already mentioned. But if the choice is between not getting a benefit that all of the American people need and holding out for a wealth tax of 1%, then I favor getting the benefit for what people need now and fight over the wealth tax later. Okay. Okay, so after our broadcast is over, there's a bunch of things I'm going to send you.
Okay.
I'm going to send you my graphics on overt congressional financing and the slide I had on the tax. And I'm going to send you links to the fatalities problem, which is important problem in terms of motivating Medicare for all. And I'm going to send you also something on taxes do not fund spending. And I'm going to send you a whole bunch of links on the job guarantee programs.
Okay, and I definitely will. Me definitely go over it and start using and getting our platform together, because, like I said, we ready. I mean, we ready to bring prosperity back to our to this district that can grow. I mean, it takes a strong leadership, with integrity to to get the people, the voters, to trust you and understand you, and that's what they need right now. Because of what the governor did was he waited a year. But John Kanye decided to go ahead. It'll be a year coming up this November that we haven't had that district haven't had no leadership, no representation, and that's why. And then because they looking at it right now, Brenda Jones, city council president, to be the front runner. Like no, because she's not out there for the people. So if they have a candidate who's going to step up to the plate, that's why I came out the governor's race. I was in fourth place as a candidate for governor, and I seen who was running for the 13th congressional district, and that's why I jumped in to save my district, the district that I grew up in. I was born and raised in the 13th.
Are you living in the 13th now?
No, I live in the 12th, but I live 10 minutes outside of the 13th. Cause where I live at is in the 12th district, which is Debbie Dino district. So I'm closer to the 13th, which is Melvindale, Ecorse, River Rouge, Romulus Wayne, Westland, Redford, Garden City, Inkster. I'm closer in Detroit and Lincoln Park. I'm in the surrounding areas of the 13th district. And understanding federal laws, you don't have to live in the district to represent that district.
Yes, I know. I think that's I'm not sure. I think that's a good law. But anyway, okay, that's a separate issue. Okay, and not one I want to take up here. Okay, but I do want to tell you one last thing, and that's in relation to Medicare for all.
Okay.
Okay, and that is that there's a fatalities problem with a lack of insurance.
Yeah.
For years, Americans have been dying because they don't have health insurance.
Yeah.
In one of the papers that I'm going to send you, I estimated that during the Obama period, during the time of the passage of the Affordable Care Act, in spite of its passage, 356,000 fatalities occurred between 2009 and 2016 because Obama did not pass John Conyers' bill in 2009 because he wanted to save the freaking insurance companies. That's what that was about. So, 356,000 unnecessary fatalities took place. If
Hmm.
Trump has his way, the death toll is going to be even worse
Exactly. Yep.
between now and 2024. That is inexcusable. We lost 3,000 lives, okay, on 9/11. And as a result of that, we spent $3 trillion and counting on wars in the Middle East.
Yep. That's true. Very true. Unacceptable.
100 times more than 100 times more lost from 2009, 2016 than were lost on 9/11, something we get all excited about. Now, we don't care that 356,000 people got killed because Obama would not pass H.R. 676 in 2009 when the Democrats had
Control.
58 senators and more than 240 representatives in the Congress. So the point of pointing this out to you is this. When it comes to passing a Medicare for All bill, time translates to lives. Time translates to lives. Bernie Sanders introduced a health care bill in the Senate of the United States. It's very good in many ways. In some ways, in some of the benefits, it's actually better than H.R. 676, which is excellent. Okay, but Bernie wants to phase it in over 4 years, whereas H.R. 676 would get implemented within a single year. So the difference between those bills has to be accounted for in terms of lives. What Bernie is suggesting is that he favors a trade off between insurance company jobs and a substantial number of American lives lost due to lack of insurance. To my mind, that's not an acceptable trade off.
It's not. No.
It's not a moral trade off. So, if you do get into Congress and these two bills both come up and you have to decide between them, you hold strong for 676 because that's going to end this fatality bullshit in a single year. And when you talk to them, when you talk to those other congressmen, you point out that fatalities problem and you point out that trade-off between jobs versus dead people. And you point out to them that's not an acceptable trade-off. And the reason why you got to tell them that is because nobody else will think it's polite. But it's necessary if you want to save those lives. Okay.
Well, when do you want to? When do you want to do another interview? You want to do one next week? That would give me time to strengthen my website, and we can go
Okay, I
over.
don't think. Okay, I don't think it should be this week. I think the first thing to do is for you to go through the challenge and for us to find out whether you're on the ballot or not.
Okay.
Okay. Once you determine that you are in the race for sure, then sure, let's have another interview. I'm all for another interview.
Okay.
Okay. At that point, I'm all for talking, things over with you again and
Because I'm
seeing
definitely
what.
going. Because I'm going down there on Friday. Because the lady who looked at my petitions, she's off tomorrow. So I'm going to schedule a meeting with her. I'm gonna call her on Thursday, which is Thursday, and to go down there on Friday to get this situation taken care of. Because, like I said again, going through my petitions, uh, and see what we did was we marked the word 13 on the side of each petition on mine. So I went through called govern. It's called govtrack.us, and you can type in the addresses of every voter that's in that lives on that street in that district, and all of them match 13. So I don't know why she said that all my signatures did not come out that district, which they did. We focus directly from Melvindale to River Rouge to Ecorse to Detroit, East Side, West Side, Lincoln Park, Redford Township, Westland, Garden City. We focus all up in that area, and Wayne and Romulus. So I don't know where she's coming from.
Okay, so that's a good thing to check out. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put on the screen a comment by Joshua Yazell,
Okay.
who is reflecting a view of by Jeffrey Ginters, one of our very, very good people here, okay, at RP. Okay, and I'm going to put this up on the screen. You can see what it says then. What happened? I put it up on the screen. Why isn't it going? There it is. Okay, he says, with respect to the numbers I gave you, he's saying that number plus 250,000 deaths a year due to for profit healthcare profit seeking and cutting costs where they should never be cut. Okay, now, what I have to say about the 250,000 is that I've heard Jeff Ginter coming forth with that particular claim, okay, and Joshua now. But I so far have not been able to verify, but for myself, whether that figure is correct. Okay, but obviously, whether it's 250,000 or it's 200,000 or it's 150,000, okay, or 100,000, if that's a year, if that's an annual figure of any kind of size like that, then that is many times the kinds of figures that I quoted to you. If you add those two sources of loss of life together, then the fatalities cost is really astronomical.
It is. I mean, it's worse than what we had in Iraq when Bush was president. I mean, back
Oh, yeah, it's
then.
much worse than we had in Iraq. It's much worse than we had in the second Iraq War. It's much worse than we had in Afghanistan. It's much worse than we've had in all these wars. I mean, it exceeds our fatality rates in all these wars by hundreds of times.
Yeah, it is very worse because I was just the other day. I mean, even when American soldiers a couple years ago back in the month of April, I mean it was deadly. I mean they was getting killed like every single day for the whole month of April, and they couldn't figure out why. So I mean, if we constantly keep dealing with these figures, it's going to get really worse across the United States, and that's why we need to get that one out the White House, because he's going to cause us a war with North Korea for no apparent reason at all, because they want to know who got the biggest finger and who can tweet at 5:30 in the morning. Because he needs a straight jacket. That one right there needs a straight jacket. He needs to get out as soon as possible. That's one thing. I mean, I have a lot of respect for John McCain, and that's why he said he did not want um, that one at his funeral. He didn't want him there. And some senator from Utah is defending Trump. I'm like, are you serious? Are you really serious, or are you deranged?
Well, there are, there are a lot of people who make outrageous moral trade-offs.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. They are just plain immoral trade-offs. They should never be made. Okay, one of our folks also adds to this. Zohar Atai says it is also a completely unnecessary trade-off. This is what's called murder by proxy, preordained, chosen assassination of some hundreds of thousands, pre-murdered for no fiscal policy or any other reason. Pure choice of the lives that are dispensable we are going to turn this whole ship of something yet hard to name. I'm not entirely sure what that exactly means, but she seems to have the right idea. Okay, and Joshua Yazel says that number, 250,000, comes from government stats of mistakes in shoddy care causing deaths in healthcare. Yes, I know it comes from the government stats, Jonathan, but the question is, has a causal modeling analysis been done on those statistics to show that the shoddy care is due to insurance company decisions that are affecting the procedures which the doctors follow? Okay, or is it due to the fact that the care itself is private? In other words, there are two different factors here. There's the insurance factor, which is addressed by HR 676, and then there's the private care factor, which is not addressed by it, because HR 676 does not provide for a national health service. No, anyway, I don't know what the answer to that question is, but it may be Jeff knows. Okay, but it's not something that I've studied, so I'm not going to pontificate on it. Okay, so I guess we've come to the end, just about 2 hours up. Okay, so I'm going to say good night, and I'll send you those things sometime between tonight and tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so take care, Ken.
You too.
Okay, it was nice talking to you.
You too.
Bye.